Who could that be at this time of night?
Good question, but Adelaide can handle it for now. I need to take my medicine.
You certainly have your priorities in order. Go on then. Get that bottle of rat piss out of your nightstand and let's get this over with.
Ugh, tastes like the devil's sweat.
You could just stop taking it, you know.
Bill, now is not the time to...
Miles, could you come back out here, please?
Be right there, dearest. Who is that at the door?
A late-night courier. You've got a message from Upton.
Seems this case is rather urgent. She wants me to meet her as soon as possible.
But didn't you just take your soporific? Are you going to be all right to go?
It won't kick in for another hour or so. Should be plenty of time.
All right, I'm going to bed then. Good luck, dear.
Good night, Addie. Hello, Upton.
I'm glad you came, Fordham. Sorry for disturbing you this late.
Shouldn't a respectable young lady like you be in bed by now?
Only if you want to add boring to your list of adjectives.
So, what do you got for me?
An infant kidnapping in Lyon. The report came in tonight just before my shift ended. The family wants to keep the investigation very low-key. They're afraid if word gets out, they'll have all sorts of ne'er-do-wells making false ransom claims. That's why I suggested they let you investigate first. Head over to 45 Belcourt Street. That's the home of Malcolm and Miriam Harris, the parents of the kidnapped boy.
Oh boy, I get to talk to rich people.
Not just rich, obscenely wealthy. The kind of people who never use the same handkerchief twice. Malcolm's father owns the company that's building the new transatlantic airship.
I suppose that would make the family an easy target for this sort of thing. Don't worry, Upton. I'll get the kid back before you can say hot toddy.
Hot toddy. I think you're losing your touch, Fordham.
And I think you've lost your joke book. Try some new material for a change, would you?
Right. Good luck on your investigation. Come see me again once you've figured things out. Or if you just need to talk. I'll be here all day tomorrow as well. So feel free to stop by.
Mr. Miles Fordham is here to see you, sir.
Very good, Mr. Havelock. Send him up.
Yes, sir.
Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Fordham. I'm Malcolm Harris.
I'm terribly sorry to hear about what's happened, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Fordham. You were very highly recommended by Miss Upton. She said you'd be able to solve this faster and more discreetly than the police. I admit it's a rather unorthodox approach, but we're desperate.
I understand. I'll do all I can to find the kidnapper and bring your son back unharmed.
If you'd like to examine the nursery, it's just through that door to the left. I'll ask you to please try and keep quiet as I just sent my wife to bed. Her nerves are rather shot, you see.
Yes, of course. I have some questions for you, Mr. Harris.
No doubt you do, but I'm really not in the mood to talk right now. It's been a difficult evening, and I'm not certain I have it in me to answer your questions at the moment.
Fair enough, but I will need to ask you about the incident at some point.
Yes, that's fine. Just not now.
My friend Bunny. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want a giant imaginary rabbit for a friend. The Bears picnic. Something about a group of giant human-like bears eating together in the woods is slightly unsettling. Look at that. The kid has a toy chest. My sister and I used to have to keep our toys buried in the backyard. Of course, that is because the only toys we had were dead rats. Interesting. This fabric looks as though it came from a garment of some kind.
Huh. There's a small emblem sewn onto the side of this piece of fabric. It just says SS.
Somebody's initials, maybe? Probably won't be another year or so before the child gets any practical use out of those blocks beyond putting them in his mouth. Look, you can see the balcony extends all the way around the side of the manor.
That would make it rather easy for someone to access this window from the outside.
No evidence of what was used to smash the glass, though. Be careful not to cut yourself, Miles. I don't think the Harris family has ever seen blood that isn't blue. It looks rather flimsy. Let's not try sitting on it.
Oh dear.
How wonderful. The soporific has started working. Well done, Fordham. Now how are you supposed to... What's the word I'm looking for? Instigate? Interrogate? I just had it on the tip of my tongue.
Perhaps it's time to call it a night.
No talking now. He'll know it's all wrong.
Well, Mr. Harris, I believe I've done all I can for right now.
Did you find anything?
Yes, I believe I have some leads I can pursue. But the most important thing to do in cases like this is wait to hear from the kidnappers. I'll be back tomorrow morning to continue my investigation and ask you and your wife some questions once you've had time to calm down a bit. In the meantime, I suggest you stay here and get some sleep. We'll all need it.
Miles, wake up. It's nearly noon.
Ah, so it is.
Why didn't you come to bed when you got home last night?
It was late. I didn't want to disturb you.
So what was so urgent about the case Upton sent you?
I'm trying to track a kidnapped child.
Oh my goodness. That's awful.
Yes, the pressure's on, but I think I should be able to crack it.
Assuming you actually managed to get anything done at the Harris Manor today.
Well, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Also, we've got company. Mrs. Delacroix is having her hair done here today, so please make yourself presentable.
You mean I'm not already?
At least do something about your hair. I do have a reputation to maintain after all.
What's wrong with my hair?
Do you really want me to answer that? We'll be here all day.
And then he said, "Oh, hello there. I don't believe we've met."
Mrs. Delacroix, this is my husband, Miles. Miles, this is Mrs. Delacroix.
Pleasure to meet you, madam.
Likewise, young man. Pleasure.
Is everything all right, Mrs. Delacroix?
Oh, yes, everything's fine. It's just that, well, you weren't what I was expecting, is all.
Keep your head, Miles. She may be a close-minded idiot, but she's just an old lady.
You mean the portrait over the fireplace didn't clue you in?
Now then, Mrs. Delacroix, what was it that you were telling me about Mr. Delacroix and his dogs?
Oh, yes. So, Harold came in and said,
Impressive. She got off pretty easy. I was expecting a repeat of the Parsons incident. You should give Adelaide a kiss on the way out, though, just to make the old bat feel extra uncomfortable.
Addie?
Not right now, Miles. I'm busy. We can talk once I finish with Mrs. Delacroix.
Goodbye, dearest.
I look forward to your return, my love.
Remind me, Miles, how is finding some rich people's kidnapped baby going to help us track down the flower shop burglar?
It's possible we might find a lead to the burglar during the course of this investigation.
Really, Miles? You really believe that?
Anything's possible, Bill. You remember how many times we encountered seemingly trivial matters which turned out to be important later on?
Well, if you plan on solving this case, you'll need your full wits about you.
I do have my full wits about me. I'm perfectly capable of doing this.
Yes, and I'm perfectly capable of being alive. I just choose to be this way because it saves on the laundry expenses. You can't deny it. You need to stop taking the soporific, Miles. Adelaide has been trying to get you to stop for months, and Upton already suspects something is amiss. Not to mention your little episode last night. Trust me, no one is going to want to hire the duller detective.
Clever. Did you come up with that one all by yourself?
What are you going to do when the cases stop coming in? How long before you get put away in Riverview?
If I do get locked away, it'll be your fault.
Which is exactly why you need to get back to your normal routine so you can find the burglar.
All right, fine. I'll stop. But the only thing that will change is that I'll wake up earlier, if I go to sleep at all.
The early bird catches the worm, as they say. Only in this case, our worm likes stealing flowers. Well, I'm glad that's settled then. I knew you'd see things my way eventually.
It's not as though you gave me much of a choice.
In time, you'll thank me. Probably not before the withdrawal hits, though.
Don't make me change my mind on this, Bill.
Mr. Fordham, you're back. Allow me to introduce my wife, Miriam.
Hello.
A pleasure, Mrs. Harris. I wish we could have met under better circumstances, but I assure you I'm doing all I can to find your son.
Thank you, Mr. Fordham.
Mr. Harris, has there been any communication from the kidnapper?
None at all.
Well, I'll have another look around, if you don't mind.
Miles, didn't you notice something a bit strange about the Harrises?
Quite a few things, actually. What are you referring to?
His son was just kidnapped, yet they're each on their own side of the sitting room. Not comforting each other, not crying together. Nothing.
They're stuck-up rich people. Not exactly the type to show emotion.
Miles, you know I'm the most cynical person there is when it comes to their type. But this isn't normal behavior, even for snobs. This goes deeper than saving face. There's something going on between them. I think you should find out what. That's odd. Why is there a loose button in the crib? Now, I'm no expert on children, but it seems like it would be dangerous to have around an infant. If only the flower shop burglar was as easy to find as this clue was. Nice mobile. Custom made, too. There'll be no mistaking what family this child comes from. The kidnapper left the child's blanket behind. There doesn't appear to be any trace of the silver spoon, though. Fancy. Some poor servant's probably going to get a flogging for leaving it in here, though. It looks like a pile of women's clothes. Must belong to Mrs. Harris. Oh, another four-poster. The Harris family certainly makes no secret of their wealth. Who in their right mind would need that many drawers?
Let's see what we have here. A very poorly written letter addressed to Mr. Harris.
I don't suppose it's a letter of admiration.
On the contrary, the author seems quite upset. Nothing else of note in any of the drawers.
Oh, well, at least we got to play a rousing game of Search the Rich People's Dresser. Wardrobes are usually always full of wonderfully dark secrets. An empty suitcase. I suppose Mr. Harris must travel every now and then. One thing is for certain, Mr. Harris uses entirely too much starch on his shirts. Yeah, it seems like this is where Mrs. Harris keeps her unmentionables. I like the ones with the frills and the stitched cat. Paperwork and receipts. Nothing particularly interesting here. More lacy underthings. I wonder which Harris they belong to. Mr. Harris's color selection is almost as drab as yours.
Let's see if there's anything of interest in any of the pockets.
So, Mr. Harris is a fan of the ponies, is he? I'm sure that's not causing him any trouble at all. Mr. Harris.
I have some questions for you if you're up to answering them, Mrs. Harris.
I'll try my best, Mr. Fordham.
Tell me what you know about your son's kidnapping.
Oh, my poor baby!
Mrs. Harris, I know this is difficult, but I need as much information as you can give me so I can bring your son back.
Yes, you're right. I have to stay strong. For Charles, it happened sometime between 6 and 8 last night, I think. Both my husband and I had gone out. Charles was in the care of his nanny, Mrs. Davis. I arrived home first, around 8:30, and that's when I found the scene in the nursery, as it was.
And what was it you found?
Mrs. Davis, unconscious in her chair, the broken window, and Charles missing from his crib. Malcolm arrived home shortly afterwards, around 9, and then immediately sent our butler, Mr. Havelock, to notify the police. We stayed up waiting for any contact from the kidnappers, but there was nothing.
You said you arrived home first. Where were you last night?
Oh, I was visiting with some of my friends. We gathered at one of their homes for a concert.
I see. And your husband?
He was at the social club with his friends as well, I believe.
Wait a minute. I know this attitude all too well. This woman is hiding something. Most likely from her husband. I doubt it's voices from beyond the grave. So the question is, what's her secret?
What can you tell me about Mrs. Davis?
Well, she's worked for us since Charles was born, a little over 6 months ago.
How did you come to employ her?
Malcolm's mother had a friend whose daughter she used to care for. She came highly recommended. We've never had any problems with her. She's always been a dream.
Where is she now?
In her room, I would guess. With Charles missing, there's little for her to do.
Where might I find her room?
There's a small building just around the back of the manor. Hers is the 4th door from the left.
Can you think of any reason why your son would be a target for kidnapping?
It could be that someone wants our money, or some lunatic who's angry about the new airship. My husband's an investor, and my father-in-law owns the company building it, you see. I just don't know, Mr. Fordham. Frankly, the fact that something like this could even happen is just terrifying.
I found this bit of torn fabric by the broken window. Do you know anything about it?
No, I've never seen it before. Do you think it was left by the kidnapper?
Perhaps. Did the initials SS mean anything to you?
No, I can't think of anyone or anything I know with those initials.
Tell me about your son.
Charles is our only child. He's such a good boy. Never makes a fuss. Always very sweet. Oh, Charles, you must be so frightened out there without your mother. Oh, please, Mr. Fordham. You have to bring him home.
I'll do my best. Tell me a bit about yourself, Mrs. Harris.
Mr. Fordham, my son has been kidnapped and is out there alone, terrified and confused. What could I possibly tell you that would make any difference to you finding him?
I suppose you're right, Mrs. Harris. My apologies if I upset you. I found this button in your son's crib. Does it look familiar at all?
No, I don't recognize it. It looks like it came from some cheap coat. Is that what the ruffian who took my baby was wearing?
That's what I'm trying to determine. That's all for now, Mrs. Harris.
Very well.
I have some questions for you, Mr. Harris.
Yes, of course.
Tell me everything you can about the kidnapping.
I don't know much. I was out last night while it happened.
Where had you been previously?
I was out with friends. My wife can verify the time I arrived home.
It seems hiding something from your spouse is an activity both Harrises partake in.
I found this letter in your bedroom. What can you tell me about it?
You went through our things?
I'm a private investigator, Mr. Harris. It's part of my job.
Of all the insolence!
You're upset, I know, but do you want me to find your son or don't you?
Yes, of course I do. That letter was sent to me by mistake. It was written to my father. Well, if you can even call that writing.
Have I ever mentioned how much I hate rich people? Because I really hate rich people.
Your father? Doesn't he own the company building the new airship?
Yes, that's right. He's been receiving many letters just like that one since the Lygia disaster. But that Devons fellow in particular has sent one every week, along with a bag of chicken bones and dust.
How peculiar.
Not only that, he leads a daily protest in front of the construction yard where the HMS Lenore is being built, trying to halt production. My God! How did I not see this before?
See what?
Devons! He has a grudge against this family because of what happened with the Lygia. I'd put money on him being involved with the kidnapping somehow, as a form of retaliation.
I'll just have to speak with Mr. Devons and see for myself. I found this bit of torn fabric by the broken window. Do you know anything about it?
Looks like it came from a piece of clothing. Possibly a jacket.
Did the initials SS mean anything to you?
Maybe? I can't really say. You'll have to excuse me, Mr. Fordham. I've got quite a lot on my mind right now. If I can think of anything, I'll be sure to let you know.
Mr. Harris, what can you tell me about these?
What? How did you...
Listen, I'm trying to help you and your family. I can't do it if I don't get the entire truth.
Do you think we could discuss this somewhere more private?
I suppose we could.
Good. Let's move to the nursery then.
Shall we continue our conversation, Mr. Harris?
Yes, of course.
Now that your wife is out of earshot, tell me about the kidnapping and what these betting stubs have to do with it.
Right. As I said before, it had already happened when I got home. I had just come from spending the evening at the meadows.
I see. I take it your wife isn't impressed by your hobby?
I promised her weeks ago that I would stop going, but I've had such a good streak lately. The last thing I wanted was to upset her further, yet it would be foolish of me to just give up on something so promising.
Can you think of anyone who might want to do you harm by taking your son?
Several, I'm afraid.
Go on.
I haven't exactly had the best of luck, Mr. Fordham. That's why this latest streak was so important to me. The truth is, I've gambled away most of my money. I've had to take out several loans so Miriam doesn't get suspicious. If she ever found out, it would be over. I can't lose her, Mr. Fordham. I just can't.
Where have I heard this before? You know, things would be so much easier if people just talked to each other.
I've tried doing business above board, but lately I've had to seek other resources.
What do you mean?
I was forced to visit a lending office. The owner was a rather shady Sambo, but I figured he'd be easier to deal with than the usual sheenies that run those type of places.
Can you believe this guy? Maybe we should just leave the kid be. He'd probably be better raised by wolves.
Who was the owner?
Mr. LeFay. I didn't bother to get his first name. His business is an abattoir row in Chumley. Horrid place, but I was desperate.
You think this Mr. LeFay may have taken your son as collateral?
Let's just say there isn't much those type of people wouldn't do to put a crown in their pocket.
Tell me about your son.
Charles is a good boy, very quiet. Miriam had wanted a child almost from the moment we married. You know how women are when they have their hearts set on something. I saw no need to rush, but...
Nice to know you're not the only one. Hey, Miles.
The first 2 times Miriam was with child, she suffered some unfortunate accidents. She was devastated, as you can imagine. So when Charles finally came along, he turned out to be quite a blessing. I can't imagine what sort of depraved madman would take him from us like this. You must find him, Mr. Fordham.
I intend to, Mr. Harris. Tell me about yourself.
There isn't much to tell, really. My life has been fairly well publicized in the newspapers.
Let's pretend for a moment that I skip over the society pages.
Well, I'm an investor. My father Clyde runs Harris Construction Company, which I will someday inherit. Any other details about me are fairly trivial nonsense, I think.
I found this button in your son's crib. Does it look familiar at all?
No, not at all. Do you think the kidnapper might have left it behind?
It's a distinct possibility. How goes the construction of the new airship?
There have been some complications, but nothing we can't handle.
Could you be a bit more specific?
Well, I already told you about the trouble with protesters at the yard, and we're blocked pending Royal Maverick's review of the safety regulations for the prototype etheric diffusion engines. Agitators and red tape aside, we should still be on schedule to have the Lenore finished and in the air by the end of the year. But really, Mr. Fordham, what the deuce does this have to do with finding Charles?
He has a point, you know.
Those are all the questions I had for now.
All right. If you don't mind, Mr. Fordham, I'm going back to the living room. I don't want Miriam getting suspicious.
Mr. Harris's color selection. Mr. Harris.
Good day to you, ma'am. I'm Miles Fordham, a private investigator. I'm looking into the kidnapping of Charles Harris. Are you Mrs. Davis?
I am. Oh, bless the spirits. They've sent someone to help at last.
Another Harris hand-me-down, no doubt. You'd think they would have washed it first. Seems like that boiler's the only thing in here that's less than 10 years old. That chest is full of undressed dolls? What the hell is wrong with this old bat? It's a spirit reaching out to a very frightened man. Possibly the fakest looking photo I've ever seen. This looks like a mourning portrait of a young woman, probably a relative of Mrs. Davis. Painting of a tower on a Scottish moor. I wish I'd been able to make it over there. Painting of a misty forest with a cemetery in the background. Cheery stuff. Her Majesty Queen Jessica. This was clearly painted a long time ago. These are all books on spiritualism and the occult. Mrs. Davis doesn't seem to have many other hobbies. Pretty distinguished-looking gentleman. Handsome. Good fashion sense. Wonder who he is. A boy taking a nap under a tree while his dog runs around in the distance. That brings back some good memories. The Harris family doesn't seem to hold the comfort of their servants in very high regard. I think a bed of nails would be an improvement. These are all books on spiritual...
I have some questions for you, Mrs. Davis.
All right.
Tell me about the kidnapping of Charles Harris.
Oh, dear. May the spirits forgive me. I feel so awful. Charlie was my responsibility, and I failed.
Mrs. Davis, that is beside the point. What's important now is finding him and bringing him home. To do that, I need your full cooperation.
Oh, you're right, Mr. Fordham. I'm sorry. I just need to collect my thoughts, get the negative vibrations out of my mind. Now, what specifically would you like to know?
What time did the kidnapping occur?
I'm not entirely sure. I know I was in the nursery having a cup of tea about 8:30. I remember feeling very drowsy. I must have passed out then because the next thing I knew, I was being woken by Mrs. Harris. That was after she got home, about 10:30. To think, whoever took Charlie did it while I was in the room. Oh, may the spirits grant me peace.
Do you happen to take any sort of sleep medications or soporifics?
Oh, dear me, no. Those types of drugs cloud the mind and make it impossible to tune into the ether.
You say that as though it were a bad thing.
I beg your pardon?
Apologies, I spoke out of turn. Can you think of anyone who would have wanted to take the child?
Well, I'm not one to gossip, but I am quite sensitive to the energy and vibrations that people give off. I get the impression that Mr. and Mrs. Harris aren't very happy in their marriage.
Ah, come on, anyone could have picked up on that. Anyone except you, that is.
Mr. Harris likes to stay out late and not take his wife with him. I can't remember the last time they went out together. I don't know what he gets up to, but it's possible he may have made some enemies.
Can you think of any reason why someone would want to kidnap Charles?
It might have been for money, but last I heard there was no demand for a ransom. I honestly don't know why this happened, Mr. Fordham. I just hope you find the poor child. He must be scared to death.
I found this piece of torn fabric in the nursery. Does it look familiar to you?
No, it doesn't. I'm sorry.
I found this button in the baby's crib. Do you recognize it?
Why, yes. That's one of Barney's eyes.
Barney?
Charlie's stuffed bear. It's his favorite toy, a gift from my friend Linda.
I didn't find a stuffed bear in the nursery.
Then whoever took the baby must have taken Barney as well. Oh, at least the poor thing has something to comfort him. Bless the spirits.
Who is Linda?
Mrs. Linda Walker. She's a good friend of mine. As I said, she gave me Barney as a gift for Charlie.
Can you tell me anything else about her?
Oh, she's a lovely girl, very much in tune with her spiritual nature. I greatly enjoy my conversations with her.
When was the last time you saw her?
I don't remember. No, wait. It was at the last Spectre Society meeting on the 19th. That's right.
What is the Spectre Society?
It's a club for spiritualists and amateur investigators of the paranormal. We meet twice a month to socialize and discuss our findings.
I see. Sounds fascinating.
Though I don't expect you to share my beliefs, Mr. Fordham.
Oh, I have a bit more experience than you'd think with regards to the spirit world.
You can say that again.
Where exactly do these meetings take place?
At a private residence in Gascon.
May I have the address?
Why, yes, it's 325 Rue Jameau. Are you going to seek spiritual guidance to find Charlie?
Perhaps. You never know what might be worth looking into. That's a lovely portrait. Who is it of?
That is my late husband, Jonathan. He used to attend meetings of the Spectre Society with me, bless him. I tried to get him to be more in tune with the other side, but I think he was just humoring me. He was a good man. Everyone at the society cared for him very much.
Do you have Linda Walker's address?
No, I don't. I never visited her home. I get the feeling she doesn't like having visitors or being home very much. She prefers to meet people elsewhere. I was the same way after my husband died. It was embarrassing for my friends to see me living so differently. But I feel it's not just a matter of pride for dear Linda. I think there are lots of bad memories associated with where she lives. I try to stay away from places like that. They leave a mark on the soul, you know.
I couldn't help but notice that chest full of dolls in the corner.
Oh, that. Oh, I know it must look a bit strange, but I pick up old and broken dolls so they can be repaired and donated to orphanages. It's my way of giving back to the community and helping poor children who have nothing to play with.
Well, what a kind soul. I wish she would find less creepy ways to express her altruism.
How long have you worked as a nanny?
Only a few years. I never had to work when I was married. My husband had a lot of money. Unfortunately, he was in great debt, and after the spirits took him back to the ether, I wasn't left with much. So I began working as a nanny to make ends meet. But I consider taking care of children a reward in its own right.
Thank you for your time, Mrs. Davis.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I'll be going now, Mrs. Davis.
May the spirits guide your path.
Hello, sir. Welcome to LaFay Lenders. I'm the owner, Chester LaFay. Are you looking to take out a loan?
Not today, I'm afraid. I'm Miles Fordham, a private investigator.
Look, I don't know what you've heard, but I run a clean business here. I don't need any trouble.
And I'm not here to cause any, for the moment.
Just keep your nose where it belongs. We should get along fine.